Hi, Mr. Bledsoe. This is Destiny Harry from your A2 math class, and this is my Unit 7 video assignment. I decided to do a video on the law of cosines. I hope you enjoy. So we're first going to start out with an oblique triangle. An oblique triangle is a non-right triangle, which means it's just not a right triangle. I have angle A, angle B, and angle C. I also have side A, side B, and side C. Angle A is 85 degrees. Angle B and angle C are unknown. Side A is unknown. Side B is 19 and side C is 14. When I see this, I think about the law of sine to help me try to figure out the unknown sides and angles. So the formula is sine A over A equals sine B over B equals sine C over C. So I go ahead and just kind of like fill out that formula, but I can't figure it out. The reason why is because there's two unknowns. When you have two unknowns, it's basically impossible to try to figure out. So I'm going to try to do the law of cosines to figure out the unknown angles and sides. So first, when you're doing this, you need a right triangle. So I'm going to kind of cut my triangle to make two right triangles, one small one and one big one. So for the smaller one, I'm going to use the adjacent side. I'm going to represent that as being D. For the larger one, I'm going to represent the adjacent side as being 19 minus D, because the entire side of B, which from the original triangle, is 19. I'm going to first talk about cosine. Cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. So the cosine of this triangle is 85 equals D over 14, because D is the adjacent side and 14 is the hypotenuse. So that gives me, when I cross multiply, that gives me D equals 14 times the cosine of 85. So now I'm going to do Pythagorean theorem for the two triangles. So I'm going to first start out with Pythagorean theorem for the small triangle, which is going to be D squared plus H squared equals 14 squared. I'm going to move H squared to the beginning, which is going to give me 14 squared minus D squared. Now we're going to start out with the Pythagorean theorem for the larger triangle, which is 19 minus D squared plus H squared equals A squared. So I'm going to expand 19 minus D squared, which will give me 19 minus D times 19 minus D plus H squared equals A squared. So now I'm going to use FOIL, which will give me 19 squared minus 19D minus 19D plus D squared plus H squared equals A squared. So after that, I'm going to put 19D minus 19D together, which will give me 19 squared minus 2 times 19D plus D squared plus H squared equals A squared. After I've done that, I'm going to substitute H squared for 14 squared minus D squared, which is the Pythagorean theorem from the smaller triangle. So that's going to end up giving me 19 squared minus 2 times 19D plus D squared plus 14 squared minus D squared equals A squared. After that, the D squared terms go away because D squared minus D squared is nothing, so they end up going away. So that's going to leave me with 19 squared minus 2 times 19D plus 14 squared equals A squared. Once I've done that, now what I'm going to do is substitute D for 14 times the cosine of 85, which is going to end up giving me 19 squared minus 2 times 19 times 14 times the cosine of 85 plus 14 squared equals A squared. So now I'm just going to rearrange that, and I'm going to put A squared at the front, which is going to give me A squared plus 19 squared plus 14 squared minus 2 times 19 times 14 times the cosine of 85. When I put all that into my calculator, that gives me A squared equals 510.6331. Now, side A is not squared, so I'm going to have to square root the number that I just got, which is 510.6331. When I square root that number, it gives me 22.6. So that is the measurement for side A of our original triangle. Now, the formulas for the law of cosine are a squared, or they can be three possible things. A squared equals b squared plus c squared minus 2 times b times c times the cosine of a. Or it can be b squared plus a squared plus c squared minus 2 times a times c times the cosine of b. Or c squared equals a squared plus b squared, or 2 times a times b times the cosine of c. You use these whenever it's appropriate that you need to find one side. So let's say I have side A and side C already, but I need to know side B. If I already know what the angle of angle B is, and I know what side A and side C are, I can use the formula for b squared, which is a squared plus c squared minus 2 times a times c times the cosine of b. You use those whenever it is appropriate to find them. So now we're going to start out with another example. Okay, for my second example, we do not know what angle A or angle B are, but we know what angle C is, which is 30 degrees. We know what side A is, which is 4, and side B, which is 3, but we do not know what side C is. So we're going to try to put in the law of sine first before we even do anything. But of course we cannot do it because there's two unknown parts of the formula that we do not know. So I'm going to go straight to the law of cosine. So for this one, we're trying to figure out what side C is. So we're going to use the formula for c squared, which is c squared equals a squared plus b squared minus 2 times a times b times the cosine of c. So when I put all that in, it's going to be 4 squared plus 3 squared minus 2 times 4 times 3 times the cosine of 30. So that's going to end up being 16 plus 9 minus 24 times 0.8660. When I put all that into my calculator, that's going to give me c squared equals 4.216. Now, side C is not squared, so we're going to have to square root the number that we just got. So, 4.261 square rooted equals C equals 2.05. So side C is 2.05. When you put that into the law of sine formula, that will help you find what maybe sine A is or sine B. So that just ends up helping you to try to figure out all the different angles, unknown angles, and unknown sides. Thank you for watching my video, and I hope that you enjoyed.